Yeah, we have, I think, just maybe a few questions from the chat. So I think someone asked about this Czech 800,000 shell thing. Kellen Dunn asked, and I was a bit confused by this too. I was hoping, Terminate to Ukraine, you knew what was going on with that.
Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah.
Excellent.
What do you want to know, or what does Kellen want to know?
Well, like, what's going on with it? Like, did it work out? Like, where did the shells come from? Did it work out? Is Ukraine going to get 800,000 shells? Because that would be pretty significant, right?
Yeah, it would be very, very significant, especially in the current situation, right? When I remember right, the Russians are firing right now 10,000 shells per day. The Ukrainians at maximum about 2,000. So yeah, they would come handy. With the sex cells, I really don't know where they get from. There are a lot of countries you can hear about, from South Korea over Bulgaria to other Eastern European countries to South Africa. You hear a lot of countries. I literally heard 10, 15 different countries. So I wouldn't say this is likely or this is likely. I don't think we would know, or we will know for sure unless someone goes public. So I wouldn't speculate on that one. Apparently, at least it makes sense in my eyes, Germany already financed partly of them. I mean, on Friday, we announced 100,000 122 shells. And just one day later, the Czech president goes live on the Munich Security Conference and states that they have found 300,000 122 shells. So basically the same Germany just announced a day earlier. And also 500,000 155 shells. So I think that's the same shells. Basically means that there are now 680,000 shells over. When I recall correctly, he said that when the funding is done, or when the shells got financed, they could be delivered within a couple of weeks, which is very, very good news. But it means that we have to act fast, very fast, to make the best out of it. The big problem is that we usually not very known, or the US very usually not very known to make fast acting, and so I think it comes down to bilateral procurements. The president also said that they are already working, or they're trying to finding financing in the US, in Germany. He mentioned Sweden and other countries. I think Germany we just did. The US, I think, is ruled out. I think the Americans here can also agree on that this won't happen in the near future. And for every other country, I can't speak publicly, of course. I mean, I can't speak publicly for my country, but I know what we're doing, at least to some extent. I just hope that some countries are financing this. France would be a good opportunity. The big problem is, I think it then comes down to where the shells are coming from, since we had these media reports, unconfirmed media reports, of course, about France and I believe it was Greece and Cyprus blocking EU procurements of artillery shells outside the EU. So when these sources located by the sex, sorry, my German mind doesn't allow me to speak that name correctly, and they don't allow the procurement outside. So when these domestic sources are not inside the EU, I don't think they could be procured with EU funding. So it comes down to bilateral aid. And this means heavy investments for other countries. I mean, not for Germany. We're announcing aid, hundreds of millions of euros on a more or less regular basis. But for the most smaller countries, I would say, this is a huge commitment. I think when it comes down, for example, to Lithuania or Latvia, the stuff we announce in one package is basically what they have spent in 2 years in Ukraine. That's just what we announce in one package. So it's very hard for them to procure these shells in a good amount, I would say. I don't know how they want to do it, but yeah, I think it comes down to bilateral aid, and we just have to act fast. And they can end up in Ukraine, but they need funding first. Sorry, that was a long answer.
No, yeah, I think I got it. So the takeaway is the shells are real. Well, as far as we know, at least publicly. Don't ask where they came from. Not important. Don't ask so many questions. But the funding mechanism is the key. And I'm guessing that's probably like 1 or 2 billion, 800,000 shells. Do you any thoughts ballpark on that?
How much they cost in total?
Yeah, well, you said like there's a need for funding. How much are we talking? I assume a couple billion for
Oh,
800,000 shells.
Yeah, I mean, when I just thinking about the 155 shades, I really have no clue how much the 1 to 2 shades are worth. I mean, we could do the basic math and just break down the German package, and then what we are left over is what the shades cost. But I think at least I would say 2 billion for everything, based on the fact that Germany bought very, very recently, in the middle of November 23, so very recent numbers, 68,000 155 shells for 200 and, oh, Jesus, someone correct me, 270, 280 million euros or so. So when you add that up, I would say you come to, let's say, 2 billion euros at least. Yeah, I think that would be needed. And that's a lot of money. That's big ton money, even when you're taking into account that no aid or no funding is coming from the US right now. So there are a lot of small countries in the EU that have to finance that bilateral, and that's hard for them, I would say.
Yeah, so I think we hope that funding mechanisms materialize quickly to get these shells, because as you mentioned, there might be like a bit of a hot it might be a hot market, so and we should do it quickly, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, as soon as possible, right? I mean, Ukraine needs sheds now, and not in 3 months, not in a year, or not in 2 years. I mean, they still need them, but they need them now. And yeah,
If these 800,000 shells are real, I mean, it really solves a major problem, which is that we need time to get all these assembly lines going and built, these new lines built. I guess like real quick, just maybe like artillery roundup, right? I mean, we've got the Namo plant is finally spinning up for real. Erlen, do you know approximately how many shells are going there?
No, and no one will know. It's
Yeah,
all
but
secret.
it's a lot. It's going to be a lot.
Yeah. I mean, so considering that Namo was one of the 3 largest producers, and I think actually they had the largest market share in Europe on artillery shells before the full-scale invasion. Um, you know, when all the 3 plants are doubling, and some say the Finns are tripling, etc., the output within the end of the year, that is definitely going to be significant. And then you have BA Systems that is scaling up massively as well, and Rheinmetall,
BAE
buying
is
up
in the UK, right?
BA in the UK, yeah. And then also, and there, of course, we have our resident.
And we don't have numbers for them either, right?
No,
BAE.
they're also secret, but
Yeah.
it's big. It's very big. But yeah,
France
also of
mentioned,
course,
I mentioned earlier, 30,000 shells a month is their.
yeah, and it's super frustrating that we get all this positive announcement in the beginning of this year, but the reality of that is that this doesn't kick in right now, right? And even the production that has been going on in all the different plants for a long time, um, since the start of the full scale invasion, a lot of that ammunition is stored around in Europe, and also even in other countries, because they ordered munitions immediately when the war started. So yeah, there's been news about. I think someone mentioned at the security conference that 40% or more of all the produced munitions in Europe is being just stocked in third countries. So yeah, it's very frustrating.
Yeah. And then Germany to Ukraine, we have, of course, Rheinmetall. They opened that plant in Spain, right? They're talking about putting one in Ukraine. But for now, do we know roughly how many shells a month they're looking at, or do they have a target or anything?
Well, first they acquired the Expire systems in Spain. They didn't open something new in Spain. They, when I remember correctly, like everything from Rheinmetall, they built now a new one in Unterlüß. They expanded the current capacities in, at least in Germany. They built a new 1.5 plant in not only in Unterlüß but also in Hungary. Now the plan to also build a new factory 155 millimeter ammunition in Ukraine, but of course it's just planned. So there's a lot of going on. When I remember correctly, there were about 450,000 shells a year. And the plan was, well, first the plan was to produce 700,000 in 2024, but recent announcements indicate otherwise. Although they said at the beginning that they're planning to produce 700,000 during the full year, they're now saying that they try to reach 700,000 at the end of 2024. The capacity, not the production, but the capacity. Yeah. So I would say right now 450 is guaranteed.
Right, I see what you're saying. Because like if they finish getting the capacity up to that by 2024, what it means is like for half the year they weren't up to that capacity. You know, like
Yes.
yeah, but
Yep.
yeah, but it seems like they can sort of rough. This is a very rough thing, but like I guess the point, all this to say, they need time to really scale these things up. And this 800,000 shells really represents a big windfall if it's legit. And it sounds like it is. So we hope they go after it. Maybe some of the funds for this artillery million shells to Ukraine thing could go to that. It seems like a lot of that's already been earmarked, though.
I personally really don't know.
Yeah.
Like when it comes down to Rheinmetall, I mean, they make great progress. But I think we could do more. It just needs more funding. I mean, I can totally understand that the company don't want to invest. I mean, alone the plant in Unterlüß now, yeah, the three new plants with the rocket motors, with the 155 ammunition, and with the RDX explosives. Alone, this is an investment of 300 million euros. Then we had the procurement of Expal systems in Spain with 1.2 billion euros. Then the investment in Hungary with all the stuff which is built now. So I would say Rheinmetall spent at least let's say 1.52 billion in all the explosives and 155 capacity and stuff like this since 2022. And I can really understand why they're saying, hey, we might need extra funding from the government, or at least I could understand when they're saying this, because they can do more. They always can do more. I mean, everyone can, right? It's not against Rheinmetall itself. Yeah, I think they just need more funding from the government. When the government would say, okay, we're giving you, let's say 500 million euros or 1 billion euros, I think Rheinmetall would know how to expand this or expand this, just to make the sheds quicker, or build a new plant to produce more, or solve a supply chain problem. Yeah, that's just my take.
Yeah, so we probably missed at least one like major manufacturer. I know Danielle is probably chomping at the bit to say something about all this. So I'll just Danielle. We got other questions, but I'll let you if you had anything you wanted to add about. Just I was trying to give people like a general picture of like the artillery situation, and also like because this 800,000 shell thing has been discussed this week, just kind of like what that would mean. But go ahead, Danielle. Welcome, by the way.
Oh, thank you. My feeling is sadness, because I think I started this nearly a year ago, saying that we should build new factory, and I just started now. This could be, everything could be anticipated, and a lot of problem already resolved if different companies had decided to do this before. And maybe it's also the government that didn't push too much, and now because they see that the threat and the risk ahead, they decided to go and do these investments, which are substantial. But yes, I think across the entire spectrum of most of the biggest artillery shell, the artillery shell production is going up in all companies. BAE, Nammo, as Erlen said, invested. BAE is investing as well. Not in new facility, to my knowledge, but so looks like that
U.S. is meeting their
bright.
targets as far as I know. I said U.S. is meeting their new production targets as far as I know. They've increased all their production targets.
Yeah, I was honestly considering mainly Europe because my belief is that Europe have to boost its capacity and become kind of independent and try to don't rely too much on US, because even if the unforeseen happen, which US is busy somewhere else, we needed to be able to provide ourselves. So these investments are really an insurance for the future, in my opinion. So that's good. Anyway, it's good that US is able to push so quickly the production up.
Yeah, definitely, and you know, just saying, as you said, like kind of everyone seems to be on target to increase production, but it's kind of inexplicable why it took this long. I mean, I'm sure there was sort of reasons, but let's be real here. If like our children were being bombed, like we wouldn't be dilly-dallying like this. It wouldn't have taken a year to get our act together. So hopefully, you know, there will be a new sense of urgency as the French thing or whatever the language they had. Hopefully that's taken seriously.
I just read the comment from Jeff, and yes, he's right. One of the few companies, because Rheinmetall is very good because it owns a lot of different sites across Europe, Spain, Italy. So it's good because if Rheinmetall push forward these these factories may start to do better. I can't speak for Italy, but Spain looks like is revamping. Is a very old site, so they need, of course, to redo some work. But for next year, I have lost my words. Their target is very minimal. It would be low even for the previous target of 1 year ago. But at the moment, probably they don't have capacity to invest or to commit resources. I'm speechless about that. I totally understand the comment from Jeff at the moment about next year.
Yeah, thanks, Danielle. And I know I remember last week you mentioned you had a topic you wanted to discuss, so we'll open the floor to you as soon as we get through all the questions. But first, we have this question from Jenny X May, which is, why hasn't the F-16 been delivered yet? So, as far as I know, in America at least, crews are being trained. There was mention that they're doing great. They're doing a great job with their training, and like they're flying on their own now, and they're still training them to do like complex missions. Like that's the stage they're at. They know how to fly the aircraft great, but you know, there's a difference between that and like operating in a wing together to accomplish a mission to destroy Russian air defense. It's a very, very dangerous environment. Obviously, they need to get really optimal, top tier training to get that done. Real issue that any new training will need to come from some kind of new funding. So up until now, like tuition is determined by that, and you know there needs to be more tuition money put in the pot for to train more pilots in the U.S. I'm not sure how far along European efforts are to train pilots, but I think that's still the limitation, is the pilot training. So does anyone on the European side want to talk about the European efforts, which I think are much more expansive than the US ones?
So I just wanted to add, so we don't really know anything about when the European training program is due to be complete, but we have a source for the US one. So maybe that puts it a little bit into perspective. The European program did start earlier, but it is very much secretive. We don't know exactly how many pilots are being trained, and we don't know anything about when they're due to be transferring these aircraft to Ukraine, except that it has been mentioned by, for instance, the Norwegian government and I think the Dutch government that they want to transfer these first batch of airplanes sometime this spring, and I think it's I think early 2024 was how it was told. So we don't have many months left really for that statement to be fulfilled. But anyways, to explain a little bit for the question, why hasn't the F-16 been delivered? Well, it takes a lot of time to train crew on the ground and pilots, and that's just how it is. You can't just put them in a plane and say like, yeah, here we go to Ukraine with this new piece of tech. You need extensive amount of training for not just the pilot, but a lot of people around the whole logistical system and the ground crew, etc.
Yeah, like and I mean, on top of just the F-16 being a super complicated aircraft, I mean, not to say the Ukrainians can't understand complicated things. Obviously, they master very complex systems, but we're talking about an aerial environment. I don't know the lingo here. I wish Latin was here to really lay this down properly, but this is a really dangerous environment to operate. I don't think there's really any parallel in modern air history of what both the Russians and the Ukrainians have to deal with in terms of, like, you look at Russian aircraft losses, they are staggering. No modern air force, I think, would contemplate losses like that. Maybe the Chinese, right? But I mean, aside from, no, like, Western Air Force would ever contemplate those losses. And the Ukrainians have certainly lost aircraft in this, and it's a difficult environment for Ukraine because Russia has so many ground-based anti-air systems and so many radars, and they have to be really clever with how they use their aircraft. And so far, they've been able to punch way above their weight. No one thought the Ukrainian Air Force could survive, a few months, let alone a year. Let alone 2 years, and they're still going strong. And they look to be getting stronger soon if the F-16s arrive. But it just should be stressed. Like, we can't put the F-16s in there willy nilly. We've got to make sure that they are set up for success, because it's a really non-permissive aerial environment, I think, is what John Ridge might say. I try to talk like John Ridge when I'm talking security lingo.
Yeah, I just pulled up some, the 2 latest days of reports from the Ukrainian Air Force, and as you can see, they shot down 4, or claim to have shot down 4 aircraft, 1 Su-35 and 3 Su-34s, and this is in a situation where Russia actually has some sort of upper hand on the aerial combat picture, but they still struggle against Ukrainian air defenses, and Ukraine is going to have similar, or if not even a worse picture when they put the F-16s, if they push the F-16s up towards the front line, which I don't think they will anytime soon. But I mean, the Russians also have longer range air-to-air missiles than the Ukrainians has now. So hopefully they will get some nice radars on some of the aircrafts that they get. But we don't really know anything about that.
Yeah, and I certainly want them to get a lot of F-16s, but I'm guessing they're not going to get a ton, just based on the way that this always goes for Ukraine. Like, they're not going to get a ton to start with, right? So we want to make, I assume one of the reasons it's taking so long is they want to make absolutely certain these guys are ready to be totally survivable in this absolutely insane air combat environment where, you know, it's Russia's losing 3 aircraft in a day, and it just accepting that is what they have to do, right?
Yep. Hopefully, also Orban will finally, make actions to his promise of letting Sweden into NATO. I think the Swedes are eager to not just join NATO, but also to be able to procure more aid to Ukraine. I think a lot of Swedish aid is going to be dependent on their NATO membership being officialized, and hopefully we'll also see the Gripens. I know some people don't necessarily think that's a good idea, but if they get Gripen East, which would have been a dream, then I think that would could make a big difference for Ukraine. It's going to be expensive for Sweden, and they probably will need help from Europeans to pay for the program. But yeah, I think it would be worth it for Sweden as well, or else no one else is going to acquire the Gripens. So we'll see.
Yeah, I know it's been a few weeks ago. The Hungarian parliament was supposed to discuss allowing Sweden into NATO. They basically assured all of their international partners that they would allow this to happen, and then they didn't. Basically, the ruling party didn't show up to the discussions, which means, there wasn't really a discussion to have. Basically all the ambassadors in Europe and the United States were just furious because, this is, again, ostensibly an ally that they told us, like, this is the way it was going to go. And then they just completely, backstabbed. I know they were very furious. And since then, there's been like a lot of back and forth going on. And very recently, something happened where they sort of delayed again this decision to allow Swedish accession into NATO. So is that essentially where we're at, Erland? Did I?
Yeah, they just didn't meet up yeah, the ruling party didn't meet to parliamentary session.
Yeah, I think again, right?
Yeah, so it's kind of it's embarrassing for Hungary as well, in my opinion. But
yeah, I think pretty soon. I mean, based on we all saw last time, like eventually Hungary does cave. Like you can back them into a corner and say, "Hey, this is how it's going to go." Like every country in Europe wants this except you, so go away. And they do give up. So I think they're definitely pushing their luck here with NATO membership for an ally. Like there's basically no good case for them why not to allow it, right? So it just comes off purely as like a jerk move. I don't know quite how to say it in diplomatic terms, but like there's not a good argument here on their behalf. So they just they basically look like they're not even worth having as an ally at this point. So I think they're really pushing their luck with this, and I think there's a limit to it. I just don't know what that limit is, right? Would you agree or disagree?
I can't say I'm an expert on Hungarian politics at all, but it seems like there is a way for Europe and Western allies to push Orban into a corner. It seems like he caves. It seems like he doesn't really, sabotage everything to the strongest way he could. He could have been even worse pain in the ass, to be honest.
Yeah, and then someone asked like, is there anything going on in the U.S. right now? Is like how I'm going to phrase it. As mentioned, the U.S. is in a recess, as mentioned in the question.
They went on holiday.
Yeah,
right?
they're basically on holiday. Yep, they're on holiday, which means they're going back to their state and campaigning or whatever. But yeah, they are not deliberating at the moment. There's talk, I think, of maybe some kind of bill in the House being cooked up, but I wouldn't put a lot of faith in it. The House is really dysfunctional. I think our best shot was to have them just look at what the Senate did and give it a thumbs up. but you know, we might see something happen there. Like there's still definitely, like, the thing is, I think they have the votes for like a package for Ukraine and for all this stuff. Like if you put all this stuff together, I think they have the votes for it. But you know, right now there's sort of procedural matters whereby certain people are allowed to, you know, in this case, the speaker, like restrict the vote from happening. So I don't know. I'm personally, I guess, optimistic that eventually, like, something will give here. There's like too many people in both the Republican Party and the Democrat Party in favor of it. But for now, of course, it's like, you know, in the short term, we're not optimistic. I wish John or Colby was here to talk about what a discharge petition is and how it works. But that's also a possibility. Basically, it's a way to I don't understand the specific mechanic, but it's a way to basically force through this one specific line item. Yeah, I don't know, someone in the chat might be able to explain it better. But yeah, that's maybe another possibility. But for now, there's a recess, 2 weeks, more waiting while Avdiivka, suffers, and the people there suffer a brutal Russian occupation where people are going to be murdered, like that priest I talked about. They're going to be put into possibly, a million people forcibly deported to Russia so far. So it's maddening as an American to watch. Just say, okay, well, another 2 weeks, but that seems to be the situation. But I guess I'm optimistic generally that eventually something's going to give here.